Alcaraz has said chess helps him stay focused and make faster decisions during matches.
You're talking about a phenom like a Carlos Alcaraz.
Tennis experts have finally exposed the story nobody wanted to touch. Alcaraz is now not trusting his father again after this injury. The man who built a champion now stands accused of breaking him. Rewind to Barcelona, April 14th. One routine return against Virtanen, and something inside his wrist gives way. He wins the match, the cameras catch his smile, then he vanishes for 3 months. Behind that silence, the rumor grew teeth. His father reportedly forced Ferrero out in December. 4 months later, the wrist collapsed. Millions of fans refused to call that coincidence. The damage kept spreading. Madrid vanished. Rome slipped away. Paris fell without him. Wimbledon crowned someone else. This week, Montreal's entry list dropped and his name was missing. Agassi torched the camp's secrecy on record. Nadal fired back to defend his heir. Friday's secret scan now decides his entire season. But here's the twist nobody expects. One verified quote from Alcaraz himself detonates this whole narrative. You have never heard it in full context. It drops midway through this video. Subscribe right now, because we serve tennis drama with real receipts. Let's walk into the Alcaraz house and open the wound. The house in El Palmar tells you everything the rumor mill ignores. Carlos Alcaraz, a man with 7 Grand Slam titles and roughly $40 million to his name, still lives there with his parents and his 3 brothers. He has said it himself in interviews, explaining that inside those walls he is not a superstar, just a normal guy. That detail matters because you cannot understand this alleged trust crisis without understanding what his father actually built. Carlos Alcaraz Gonzalez was a genuinely good player in his day, ranked among the top 40 in Spain, but he abandoned any professional dream as a teenager for a brutally simple reason. His family could not afford it, so he stayed local, became the tennis director at the Real Sociedad Club de Campo de Murcia, a club his own father had helped transform from a hunting society into a tennis and swimming facility, and he poured everything he never got into his second son. A 4-year-old Carlitos got his first racket from that man. By 10, the kid had a Babolat contract. By 12, agent Albert Molina came knocking, and it was the father who weighed the decision and finally said yes. Now hold that image in your mind because it collides violently with what happened in December 2025. Alcaraz announced, out of nowhere, that he was splitting from Juan Carlos Ferrero, 7 years together. 2 ATP Coach of the Year awards for Ferrero in 2022 and again in 2025. A partnership that produced the youngest world #1 in history and a career Grand Slam in the making. Ferrero had turned down offers from other top players just to keep working with this kid he had taken in at 15. The tennis world was stunned. Fans demanded answers, and when the reporting settled, one name kept surfacing behind the scenes. According to Tennis 365's reporting on the entourage, Carlos Sr. is thought to have been a key factor in the split, with the relationship between the father and the coach believed to have been in decline for some time. The same reporting described the father as wielding huge influence over his son's career, an influence expected to shape everything in 2026 and beyond. That single detail is the seed of the entire trust narrative. Once fans learned that the father may have helped push out the most successful coach in the player's life, a countdown started in people's heads. What happened 4 months after Ferrero walked out the door? The wrist gave way in Barcelona. The connection practically drew itself. A section of the fan base decided the sequence was cause and effect, arguing that the old regime protected the player's body, that the new setup got reckless, and that deep down the son must now be questioning the man who reshuffled his team. The theory sounds seductive. It has a villain, a victim, and a timeline. What it does not have, and this is where the real story begins, is a shred of on-record support. Look at what actually changed when Ferrero left. Samuel Lopez took over as head coach, and this was no outsider parachuted in by an ambitious parent. Lopez came from Ferrero's own academy structure and had already joined the team in December 2024, working under Ferrero throughout the 2025 season, the most successful campaign of Alcaraz's career to that point. Alcaraz called him one of the best coaches on tour when he arrived. The rest of the staff barely moved. Juanjo Moreno, the trusted physio figure who has guided him through every physical crisis of his career, stayed. Fitness trainer Alberto Lledó, 5 years and counting at his side, stayed. Physiotherapist Fran Rubio, who joined in February 2025, stayed. Molina remained the agent he has been since discovering the 12-year-old prodigy. Even the family footprint inside the team grew, with older brother Alvaro, a former doubles player, taking an expanded role in the coaching setup at the Australian Open, where Alcaraz described him as a hugely important person in both his personal and professional life. Continuity, not chaos. That is what the roster says. The results said something louder. In his very first tournament without Ferrero, with Lopez in charge and his father and brother in the box, Alcaraz won the Australian Open. He beat Novak Djokovic in a 4-set final and became the youngest man in history to complete the career Grand Slam, doing it at 22. Sit with that for a second. If the coaching change orchestrated in part by his father had broken something, Melbourne was the moment it should have shown. Instead, the man delivered the one major that had escaped him and then stacked another title in Doha on top of it. He went 22 matches with only 3 defeats before Barcelona. His own words from that stretch bury the feud narrative in concrete. Speaking about the people around him in Melbourne, he said you could tell the great emotion and passion they felt for the sport, before adding that having his father and Samuel there made him especially happy. Those are not the words of a champion nursing suspicion toward his dad. Then came April 14th, and everything that followed turned Team Alcaraz into a black box. Here is where honest fans have to separate 2 completely different accusations, because one of them is fiction and the other is uncomfortably real. The fictional one says the player stopped trusting his father. The real one says the public stopped getting answers from the camp. After the walkover handed to Tomasz Machach in Barcelona, information slowed to a trickle. The team never officially confirmed the precise nature of the injury. Sky Sports reported it as tendinosynovitis, an inflammation of the tendon sheath in the right wrist, and that description became the accepted diagnosis. Yet the silence from inside the camp left room for every dark theory imaginable. Tennis 365 openly noted there had been no confirmation of the injury's nature, framing it as a competitor's instinct to keep rivals guessing. When withdrawals from Madrid and Rome arrived, then Roland Garros, each announcement came wrapped in careful Instagram statements rather than press conferences. Andre Agassi ran out of patience with that approach. The American legend publicly voiced his frustration over what he saw as a lack of transparency from the Alcaraz camp, and his irritation gave the rumor machine its oxygen. When a legend of the sport says he cannot get a straight answer about the biggest star of the next generation, viewers fill the vacuum themselves. Rafael Nadal moved fast in the opposite direction, telling reporters that Carlos would return from the injury and return strong, because he was simply too good for it to be any other way. David Ferrer, the Spanish Davis Cup captain who stays in close contact with the player, urged everyone to stay calm and insisted the recovery was going well, saying the important thing was for Carlos to recover completely, one day at a time. Notice the pattern in who defends him. The people closest to Spanish tennis, the ones with actual access, kept projecting calm. The doubt came almost entirely from the outside looking in. While the public argued, a genuinely fascinating expert, war broke out over the injury itself. And this is the debate that actually deserves your attention. Olga Morozova, the former world number 3 and a Wimbledon and French Open finalist, went on record with Russian outlet Championat and delivered a warning that rattled coaches everywhere. She acknowledged his amazing technique, but argued that his tennis is very wrist-based, and she said what happened to that wrist should be a wake-up call, telling coaches not to copy the technique. Think about the implication. She was suggesting the very thing that makes Alcaraz magical. The whipped top spin, the improvised flicks, the disguise on the drop shot might be the thing destroying him from the inside. Injury prevention specialist Stephen Smith pushed back against her theory in comments to Tennis 365, explaining that if the problem is the tendon sheath, that is generally indicative of something that is not a major issue. Rick Maxey, the legendary coach who helped develop the Williams sisters, and Andy Roddick, took a third position entirely. He praised the camp for playing the long game, called the decision smart, and pointed out the obvious truth hanging over everything, admitting nobody will really know the answer to the risk situation until Alcaraz returns and starts playing again. Matzi also refused to blame the style, describing him as the Spanish magician who holds the racket like a paintbrush, insisting that this is how he plays, from the heart and from the soul, and that he is not going to change anything. So the experts finally exposed something, just not a family feud. What they exposed is the actual fault line running through this saga, a genuine argument about whether the most watchable game in tennis carries a hidden tax on the body that produces it. And buried inside that argument sits the one relationship question that holds up to scrutiny. It has nothing to do with the father. The trust that broke in Barcelona was between Alcaraz and his own wrist. Analysts covering his rehabilitation have described exactly this challenge, noting that even after medical clearance, the hardest stage of recovery is often psychological, because a player can hesitate for fractions of a second before attacking, unconsciously protecting the injured area long after doctors confirm the danger has passed. His entire identity is built on fearless, explosive, improvised tennis. Every violent forehand runs through that joint. The comeback question that should terrify fans is not whether he believes in his dad. It is whether he can swing freely without wondering if his body will betray him again. Now for the quote you were promised, the one that detonates the trust narrative in his own voice. During the layoff, in one of his rare extended statements, Alcaraz reflected on what the injury taught him, and he went straight to the subject of family. He said everything happens for a reason, that he believes it is fate, and that life has something special for him when he returns, something beautiful. Then came the part the rumor accounts never show you. He said he now realizes what really matters, his family, who have always been there to support him, and he stressed that they never forced him to play tennis, but always gave him the choice, which helped him continue to enjoy the game and never feel stressed. He finished by saying they are the reason he is the person he is today. Read that against the headline claim. A son supposedly frozen in distrust toward his father chose the lowest moment of his career to publicly credit his family for his entire character, and he specifically praised them for never pushing him. That is not damage control. Nobody was even asking him about his father. The tribute came unprompted from a man watching his rivals lift trophies he could not compete for, admitting he was following results from home, watching tournaments he would have loved to play. The recovery itself, once you assemble the verified pieces, reads like careful engineering rather than dysfunction. He wore a protective brace from mid-April onward and spent the first months restricted to fitness work, unable to load the right hand at all. There were surreal scenes from Murcia during that stretch, including practice sessions where he hit forehands left-handed purely to keep his footwork alive without stressing the injury. By mid-June, the brace came off and Liado posted footage of the two of them running together with a caption, joking that the weeks were flying by and he could no longer keep up, comparing his athlete's grind to Rocky. On June 28th, fans finally got the moment they had waited 11 weeks for, a clip of Alcaraz gently hitting with his right hand again. One fan reply summed up the global mood perfectly, confessing that their emotional stability depended on that wrist. More recent footage showed him working with a bandaged wrist and an unstrung racket frame, drilling stroke mechanics through shadow swings before adding real impact. Every stage was deliberately sequenced. Spanish outlet La Verdad then revealed the decisive step, a medical examination. In Barcelona, with Dr. Angel Ruiz Cotoro scheduled for Friday, with clearance opening the door to unrestricted training from Monday and a mini preseason designed to deliver him to the North American hard courts in peak condition. Why so slow? Because his team understands the graveyard of careers this exact injury has filled. A wrist that heals badly can become a lifelong problem, and tennis has two haunting case studies. Juan Martín del Potro, a talent once considered the heir to the throne, watched wrist surgeries devour his prime. Dominic Thiem won the US Open and then saw a wrist injury hollow out everything that came after, until retirement arrived years before it should have. The Alcaraz camp has referenced exactly this caution through its choices, refusing to set return dates, refusing to gamble on grass, treating a diagnosis that specialists called relatively minor with the seriousness of a career-threatening event. His physical team even turned the sidelines into an opportunity. Reporting out of Spain described the layoff being used to build a stronger physical version of him, taking advantage of the fact that a wrist problem still allows nearly every other part of the body to be trained hard. The team framed the whole period as a mental recharge and a physical rebuild rolled into one. The stakes waiting for him are enormous, and they explain the tension around every scrap of news. He has already forfeited 4,800 ranking points during the absence. The hard-court swing now demands he defend another 3,000 from last season, when he won Cincinnati and the US Open back-to-back, beating Jannik Sinner in both finals. His number 2 ranking is actively bleeding. Alexander Zverev, who finally captured his elusive first major at Roland Garros this year by beating first-time finalist Flavio Caballi, has climbed to within striking distance in the live rankings, sitting under 300 points behind while competing deep at Wimbledon. Meanwhile, Sinner, the rival who took the number 1 spot after their Monte Carlo final, keeps consolidating at the top. This is why the Montreal entry list omission hit so hard. Missing the Canadian Masters would shrink his preparation window for New York to almost nothing, and whispers have already surfaced, suggesting he might not even attempt to defend his US Open title, potentially waiting until late in the year for a fully healed return. Set that against La Verdad's reporting that Montreal remains the earmarked comeback target ahead of Los Cabos and Washington, and you have 2 credible signals pointing in opposite directions. Entry lists can change through late arrangements, so nothing is settled, but the contradiction is real and the next few days resolve it. Step back and the whole picture snaps into focus. A father who sacrificed his own career, built a champion, and now carries real influence over that champion's team, including a role in the most shocking coaching split in recent memory. A camp that guards information so tightly that legends of the sport complain about it publicly. A body of experts genuinely divided over whether the most beautiful technique in tennis broke its own owner. A rumor was inevitable. Humans see a father's fingerprints on a coaching change, see an injury 4 months later, and manufacture betrayal because betrayal is a better story than tendon inflammation. Except the man at the center keeps refusing to play his part in the drama. He credits his family for everything, celebrates his father's presence at his triumphs, keeps his brother inside the team as its glue, and was even photographed at the Madrid Open watching his youngest brother Jaime compete in the under-16 event while his own wrist sat in a cast. He spent his birthday at home with that cast and a cake, surrounded by the exact people he supposedly no longer trusts. The evidence points one way. The trust inside the Alcaraz household never cracked. The only trust still under reconstruction belongs to a 23-year-old and the joint that carries his genius, and Friday's verdict in Barcelona tells us how close that repair really is. So here is where you come in, because this story is about to move fast. The scan results, the training footage, the Montreal decision, the answer to whether the champion of New York even shows up to defend his crown, all of it lands in the coming days, and we will be covering every twist with verified facts instead of recycled gossip. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of tennis fan this channel exists for. Hit that subscribe button right now, ring the notification bell so the next update reaches you the moment it drops, and smash the like button if you believe the truth beats the clickbait every single time. Drop your take in the comments too. Do you think Alcaraz returns in Montreal, or does he protect that wrist until New York or beyond? Your prediction might end up featured in our next video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.